call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. And the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 6:40. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the matters from the floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Wernley from Madison High School.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. It is my pleasure to introduce Sarai Alvarado, who will be giving our invocation today. Joining Sarai today, if you'll please stand, are her parents. We have Izzy Alvarado and Cassandra Alvarado with their little brother Ezekiel. Sarai excels in our pharmacology CTEC program and just actually passed her certification last Friday, and has a goal of becoming a pharmacist and has been accepted to the Incarnate Word University.
Congratulations.
She is also the secretary of our HOSA, which is the Texas Association of Health Occupation Students. Such a great kid all around, and will be graduating summa cum laude. Sorry.
Good evening. We come together today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of our community. As we make decisions that might affect the students, staff, faculty, alumni, and friends of NEISD, we hope for growth, peace, and continued effort in the development of our district. And continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater good and for the service of our district. We appreciate your presence today and look forward to the continued success of our NEISD students. As Gwendolyn Brooks once said, we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.
It is also my pleasure that we have Bryce Terhune with us. He will be reciting our pledge tonight. Joining Bryce, if you'll please stand, are his parents, William and Veva Terhune. And Bryce is an ROTC commander and also our homecoming king. He is a summa cum laude and was accepted to the Aerospace Engineering School at UT Austin, as well as the Air Force Academy under the recommendation of Congressman Lloyd Doggett. He is also our drum major. You know at the football game where they have the guys that are directing from those big tall stands? Yeah. Well, that's him. He doesn't need the stand. We save time that way, you know. But that is Bryce, and he is such a young and responsible young man and just a great personality all around. Right?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much. Yes, Sari and Bryce, we have certificates for you if you'd like to come forward. Yeah. And Miss Winkley's going to give you a certificate along with Dr. Micah. Thank you all for being here and best of luck to you. Oh, I know. Love it. Item 6, recognitions. A, Student Volunteer of the Year. Ms. Chancellor.
As they make their way in, President Grona, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, would you mind telling Miss Pate to come on in, please? She's standing right there. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Brooke Pate to come on up to the microphone to introduce our awesome volunteer of the year. She is our volunteer resource manager. I'm going to turn it over to Brooke at this time.
Whew. Okay. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the volunteer program, I'm excited to present the NEIST Student Volunteer of the Year Award tonight. In March, each of our high schools turned in a Student Volunteer of the Year nomination. The volunteer office reviewed each campus nomination, and the top 3 students were interviewed. The individual district winner is selected not only for their contribution to the community, but also for the leadership that they provide to their campus. The recipient of this year's NEISD Student Volunteer of the Year Award exemplifies the NEISD 360 student. Excuse me. Abby Diamond is a senior at Churchill High School. She is an active member and leader of the Winners Circle, Smile Club, and the Unity Club. Abby has dedicated over 300 hours to her school and her community through the different organizations she's involved with. Over the last year, Abby saw a need in the community after her father was diagnosed with COVID in March of 2020, and she decided to do something about it. She started Survivors, a nonprofit in honor of her father. Survivors provides items to assist COVID-19 patients in their recovery. Abby designed t-shirts that she sold in order to raise money to buy supplies for the Survivor baskets. These baskets were then dropped off to local hospitals for recovering patients. Abby's impact on her community has been immense. Abby is intelligent and considerate. She is a very talented young lady who has a bright future ahead of her. She's here tonight with her father, Jared, and her mother, Robin. And at the time of our interview, she hadn't decided where she was going to go to school, but tonight she told me she has committed to the University of Texas. So I'd like to present this year's Student Volunteer of the Year Award to Abby Diamond from Churchill High School.
Go ahead, Sandy. Congratulations. So proud of you. Congratulations again. Yeah. Congratulations again. Thank you. Item B, 2020-2021 Johnson High School Varsity Dance Team. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Julie Shore is at the podium to handle this agenda item. Ms. Shore.
Good evening. It is with great honor that I get to introduce to you a very talented group of young ladies from Johnson High School. The Johnson Varsity Dance Team competed in the National Dance Alliance national competition last month and brought home the national title. The Johnson High School Legacies are national champions in hip hop. This is the first time they've ever competed in the hip hop division, and they won a national title, which is pretty impressive. Under the direction of Mrs. Stephanie Trevino-Fallon, this dance team holds 2 national titles. We did not get to bring this amazing team to you, to the board in March last year due to COVID, but this team also won a national title last year for their game day performance. There's another award that this amazing team brought home, and this is 2 years in a row. It is called the Go Be Great Award. It is a very small elite number of the hundreds of teams that go to this national competition that are selected for this honor, and they received it for their amazing philanthropy efforts in their community and at school. So I'm most proud of them for that. I'm so proud of these dancers and their amazing director, and I would like to introduce each of them to you this evening. Brooke Bixby. Morgan Burgess. Brooklyn Burke. Alida Chin. Peyton Kraft. Cammie Davis. Isabel Delphine. Georgia Floyd. Shannon Gillis. Marina Gonzalez. Kaylin Heinrich. Andrea Heredia. Alessandra Lopez. Kendall Matkins. Alyssa Martinez Salazar. Zoe Massa. Bailey McEwen. Hannah Miller. Julia Ortega. Maria Otten. Aaliyah Resendez. Evelyn Smith. Nicole Subia. Sarah Walper. Jessa Whalen. And their amazingly talented director, Mrs. Stephanie Trevino-Fallon. Congratulations, ladies. We're going to take a picture, so gather up and let's grab that trophy, get it right in the center. Ladies, you can take your mask off for the picture if you would like. You can take your mask off just for the picture. Stay there so your parents can take cute pictures. Okay, thank you so much, ladies. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Item C, Wrestling State Individual Recognition, Legacy of Educational Excellence High School, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Kelly Parker, our executive director of athletics, will address this agenda item.
Madam President, trustees, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. It is a great honor to recognize Austin Hartmangruber, who placed second at the 6A state wrestling tournament held a week and a half ago in the 160-pound weight class, which is an awesome feat. It's very hard to do. Austin Hartmangruber.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
I think Dr. Micah would like to see some of the moves real quick. If we could see.
I think he wins.
Item D, Wrestling State Individual Recognition, Reagan High School. That student was not able to be here tonight, so we will bring him back at another meeting. So item E, UIL 6A Boys State Soccer Champions, Legacy of Educational Excellence High School, Mr. Jimenez, Mr. Parker.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Parker. We'll just get going.
Okay. Tonight is a special night to recognize the Legacy of Educational Excellence soccer team, which won, as we all know, the 6A state championship 2 or 3 weeks ago. And if you had a chance to see the game, which many of you did, it was awesome. I mean, to watch their teamwork and them go out there and unselfishly play for each other and for their coaches and for their school and their community was an awesome feat. And so what I'd like to do is introduce each player. If the player is not here, Coach Rogers will accept their certificate for them.
Okay, yeah, so y'all.
First, we have Jesus Blanco. Joey Bertrani, I'm sorry. And actually, Joey, I think, is trying out for a professional team in Austin right now.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
Ibrahim Simbawi. Luis Cabrera. Esteban Zavala. Gio Garcia. Ibrahim Kaita. Christian Chandler. Gavin Seaschultz. Dante Valencia. Jonathan Facio. Davis Kelly. Juan Aviles. Ozzy Aspitia. Saul Taez. Aldair Elias. Temajun Munoz. Efren Cortez. Manuel Coronado. Ian Lee. Henry Bolin, who was also the MVP of the game. Julian Sanchez. John Kirkendall. Manuel Cruz. And Sanwe Kayakoli.
We are so incredibly proud of you all. This is just amazing. Thank you for, and we were at the
Let's get your picture,
celebration
guys.
at Littleton Gym last week, or I can't remember when that was, but just so incredibly proud of y'all.
Omar and I were at the game in that lovely weather.
I'm sorry. I forgot to introduce the coaches.
Yeah.
The leaders of the group, David Rogers, the head coach, and Chris Perillo, the assistant coach.
Yeah, y'all are gonna have to. Thanks for bringing them back. Cracking me up. Yes, you can take your mask off for the picture. Thank y'all for being here. Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations again. Okay. Yeah, that's the first stack, and then. Okay, item F, San Juan Guard Armed Drill Team, Army JROTC National Champions and All-Service JROTC Armed National Champions, Roosevelt High School. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I'd like to ask Colonel Robert Henson, Director of Army Instruction, up to the podium, so that way he can address this next agenda item.
Thank you.
President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, members of the executive staff, and you special parents. I'm here this evening to not just talk about teams that won us another national championship, but the fact that they held everything together all year long. They depended on one another. They worked together. And that's real success. I'm going to introduce my counterpart here, the instructor and coach for the San Juan Guard, who came back with an all-Army national championship and very next day competed in the all-service national championship, bringing home both national championship trophies. Command Sergeant Major Ainsley Harris.
Thank you. How much time I got? Oh, just checking. Okay. Well, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and all of our Rough Rider family. I want to thank you all for letting me be here tonight to introduce the best team in the nation. Thank you so much. As you know, that being a champion, it takes a total team effort. And I just want to take a few minutes just to acknowledge those who help us win the championship. And I'd like to start with our chaperones tonight, who went with us to address every kid's needs during the competition. And you all know without equipment, there's no competition. And I'd like to personally thank Mr. and Mrs. Brunder for getting our equipment from San Antonio to Daytona Beach and back. I think the only problem we had was bringing back 20 trophies in a trailer to get them all back in one piece. I want to thank our principal. I think I spent more time in his office this year talking about things like safety protocols and how we protect our kids while training them, mentoring, coaching them to get them ready for the competition. So I want to thank our principal for that. And last but not least, the Rough Rider parents. I thank you for embracing our goals and objectives and getting our kids ready to go and compete and to win 2 national championships. So thank you, parents. Thank you for all of your support. And hopefully we can run this back again. Thank you. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce the San Juan Guard, starting with our commander, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Leroy Davila. Cadet Captain Ephraim Romero. Cadet First Lieutenant Elijah Jackson. Cadet Command Sergeant Major Seth Marino. Cadet Captain Francisco Rodriguez. Cadet Captain Yasmin Udin. Cadet Captain Donatello Garcia. Cadet First Sergeant Isabel Sanchez. Cadet Sergeant First Class Eric Marquez. Cadet Giancarlo Rodriguez. Cadet Corporal Tomac Tavera. Cadet Sergeant First Class Adrian Gonzalez. Swing it this way, look, swing it this way. Come on now. Cadet Sergeant First Class Ramiro Gomez. And Cadet Corporal Daniel Romero.
I think she's going to want to take a picture of y'all.
You guys can make 2 rows.
Right here, Ross, come up Sorry on the news.
Quickly, quickly.
You guys can take your mask off for the photo.
Brian, get in there.
Good. Got a couple more coming.
Okay, congratulations to you all.
Guys.
Yeah, they look amazing.
Now, Miss Grona, I have the,
Let me,
yes, ma'am.
oh, no, okay, you're doing all service now? Or was that included in that one?
That was included.
Okay, so let me call the next item
Yes,
then.
ma'am.
Is this riderettes? Okay, item G, riderettes, unarmed drill team, all service, JROTC, unarmed national runner-up champions, Roosevelt High School, Colonel Henson.
Thank you, Ms. Grona. It gives me great pleasure. If you've ever worked with these young ladies, you know there's a lot of drama. So, again, their commitment to each other during the year has just been phenomenal. Hasn't been easy. Master Sergeant Johnson is very patient. So, my partner at Roosevelt High School and the coach instructor of the Riderettes, Master Sergeant Marshante Johnson.
Good evening again, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, the executive staff, guests, and just like Sergeant Major said, and Colonel Henson, the parents and the community of Roosevelt High School. This is always emotional for me. So let me calm down. This is an amazing group of girls. Just like Colonel Henson said, it has not been easy. I have worked with all of JROTC, but the female population is special to me. They take a special type of patience, but they rise to the occasion. They have done it for me every time, and this group is no different than the other groups, other than they have just brought home our first ever, since I have been here coaching, all-service runner-up championship. I can't say any, there's so much I would like to say about each one of those. I have 3 seniors that are leaving. The first young lady that's going to come out is my drill team commander. She's a junior. I have 3 seniors that are going to be leaving this year, so it is bittersweet for them. And I wouldn't be able to do it without my co-workers, Major Garner and Sergeant Major Harris, because I can't do this by myself. So I want to thank Colonel Henson. I want to thank the board and the district, because without you guys, we would not have been able to travel. You gave these kids the opportunity to get out. They have dealt with a lot during COVID, and to be able to go do that and come back and bring home national championships was such an amazing thing for them, and we couldn't have done it without you guys. So we appreciate you, and we want to thank you for that. So without further ado, I want to introduce the young ladies of the Riderette Unarmed Drill Team. So the first one is Cadet First Lieutenant or Cadet Captain Castellanos, Giselle Castellanos. Cadet First Lieutenant Chelsea Walker. Cadet Captain Caitlin Munch. Cadet First Lieutenant Isangelis Camacho. Cadet First Lieutenant Gabrielle Castleberry. Cadet First Lieutenant Nia Nassif. Cadet Sergeant First Class Tamira Miller. Cadet Sergeant First Class Leah Cerna. Cadet Captain Victoria Mosqueda. Cadet Sergeant First Class Amaya Pata. Cadet Corporal Caroline Bronder. Cadet Corporal Amelia Roki. And And the baby of the group, the only freshman on the team, is Cadet Corporal Rosie Morales.
Congratulations. So proud of you all. And those are some fancy outfits. Love the hats.
Yes, let's
You notice how quickly they did that? They understand this line.
They did a better job than the boys did.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, masks off.
John Michael's still here. Well, hey, they did.
Oh. Oh my gosh, I know. Oh.
Hey, I was not gifted with titles. I will agree with that.
All right, Riderette.
Yes, congratulations again. Yeah.
Yeah, now you gotta try to get the mask on there.
David, I'll come do that.
Oh man, I thought we were gonna get a demonstration.
Quickly.
Pirates, the house of TR.
That's so cool. Oh gosh, I know. Item H, 2020-2021 Administrative Training Program Graduating Interns. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff and guests. Dr. Justin Oxley, Executive Director for School Administration, is at the podium to address this agenda item. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. It gives me great pride that Northeast Independent School District remains committed to identifying and mentoring staff members who aspire to assume broader leadership roles district-wide. The administrative training program is a critical component of this process. This year-long program focuses intensively on developing both the leadership capacity and the pragmatic skills necessary to continue to provide the highest possible caliber of instruction and leadership to our staff and students. I'd like to welcome you, the 2020-2021 administrative interns. Jennifer Aguilar, Assistant Principal of Curriculum at Churchill High School. Dea Apolinar, Assistant Principal, Wilshire Elementary School. Ernesto Cardoza, Bilingual Instructional Coach, Colonial Hills Elementary School. Adrian Chevalier, Program Specialist in the Special Ed Department at Central Office. Leslie Gills, Math Instructional Coach, Stahl Elementary School. Kathy Goldblum Vasquez, Assistant Principal, Stahl Elementary School. Ashley Hofmeister, Assistant Principal, Tejeda Middle School. Karen Hicks, Kindergarten Teacher, Camelot Elementary School. Victoria Lane, Family Specialist, Vineyard Ranch Elementary School. Edward Lozano, Assistant Principal, Jackson Middle School. Heather Mashingo, Assistant Principal, Bradley Middle School. Robin Pryor, Instructional Intervention Teacher, Castle Hills Elementary School. Eleanor Rodriguez, Special Education Teacher, Walsham Elementary School. Jenny Lee Taylor, Assistant Principal, Roosevelt High School. Rosemary Vasquez, Assistant Principal, East Terrell Hills Elementary School. And Joshua Villarreal, Assistant Principal, Madison High School. 2020, 2021 interns.
Dr. Russell, I thought you'd give them like a command and they'd be like,
Well,
ask you attention.
for their last, to get out of here. Yeah.
All right, matters from the floor. Item 7. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas 78217. Ms. Huey.
Mel Hutzler.
There you go.
Yes, please state your name.
My name is Mel Hutzler. I'm speaking on behalf of the Parents United for Freedom, and I have 2 students in Northeast ISD. I'm here to talk about the mask, and I know you'll have a difficult job to do, and it's not easy. But one of the reasons why I'm here is to talk about mask choice, and I would like to see that done. I know you all made a decision for this year. We should reconsider that, but for next year, we would like our children to be able to go to school without a mask. I know we look at the coronavirus, and there are many diseases, the death rate for many diseases. There's some out there, SARS and other things such as that. The death rate's very high. But when we look at, for coronavirus, I believe it's CDC had about 1.9. But there are a lot more diseases that are out there with the death rate. One of the things I like the board to know is look at how many of teenagers have actually died in the state of Texas, or died in San Antonio, or died even in Northeast ISD because of coronavirus. And go look that up sometime. I hope that you'll do that because you're going to find it's very low. I saw on the CDC 0.003% chance of a teenager dying from the coronavirus. That's really small. I know we don't put our kids in hazmat suits to send them to school, although I saw on Amazon they have those for $129.95. But we don't do that because it's overdoing it. And with the mask, I know my daughter, she's going to be speaking next. She has asthma. My other son has asthma. He's in high school, played basketball as well. But for them to wear their mask as much as they have to, it's just a little excessive, especially since the coronavirus does not affect our teenagers. And so I asked the board that you would reconsider the policy for this year. I know that's kind of closed. But think about that policy going the next year, because one of our concerns as parents is that will be reinstituted for next year. And we don't want that to happen right now. I'm part of Parents United for Freedom. We're making T-shirts. We care about our kids a lot, but the coronavirus numbers have gone down quite a bit, but we still see the mask on our children. And with asthma, it's not a good thing. And Parents United for Freedom, which we're trying to do, is we're against critical race theory, of course, the mask in schools, the LBGT agenda, something else we'd like to see. Now, I understand that some of these things are not in our school, but we will fight against them. We don't want them to be there. But we think that most of our kids are at school because they're concerned about the coronavirus. That's not the case anymore. Many of those kids are at home because their parents don't want them wearing the mask.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal Hutzler.
Hello, I am Crystal, and I am in 5th grade at Encino Park. I am here to speak about masks because I have asthma, and I know that many kids in my grades have it worse for me. And so, basically, some people talk about that it's a little risk we should take, and that's 7 hours for us, and 7 hours without mask could also do a lot for kids. And some people think it's just one little thing, but to me it's a lot because it's my childhood when I'm growing up. And I think last board meeting or so, they let you not wear a mask for recess. And some of the teachers still make kids wear a mask at recess. And so then some kids have like panic attacks or something, because I almost fainted 2 times when I was at school. And that is all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Deanna Fensel.
Good evening. The time for using fear and false facts to make decisions
please
needs
state
to
your
stop now. Deanna Fensel. We are here to fight for our children. The school board has stated that they know everyone is frustrated with the mask. What it really is disgust and disbelief. The disbelief that the school board, whom we elected to implement an educational curriculum, has now taken it upon themselves to make personal health care decisions and choices for our children. The district does not have that authority. The mask and guideline policies should end now and not after this summer. They are not reasonable, they are not justifiable, and they are not legal. When the dust settles, the parents will make sure that the school board is held responsible for the psychological abuse and destruction inflicted on our children. Let's not forget a fact. We have 3 board members coming up for re-election this year, and the parents will support candidates that truly have the best interest of our children at heart. Our votes will be heard. We won't forget. Make no mistake. The school board can swat us off like flies, because that's what it's been feeling like lately. But we will never give up advocating for our children. The disrespect and the dismissive actions from this school board are inexcusable. Our children only have one life, and we need to ensure that they are fearless. School policies really need to change. Blind trust in authority is the greatest enemy of truth, by Albert Einstein. So one thing that I didn't like at the end when you guys were giving awards is when you gave the command to remove the mask. I just felt like, what country are we in? You may remove your mask. Giving commands like that, that's where we're at. I promise you, our organization, Parents for Freedom, for our kids, we're going to fight, guys. You have to represent all of us, not just some of us who want to wear a mask. We're not telling anybody you can't wear a mask. You need to represent all of us. We all deserve to have our voices heard. And that's it.
Thank you.
Jill Harris.
Good evening. So I'm also a member of the group.
Please state your name.
Oh, I'm Jill Harris.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the group Parents United for Freedom, and I'm here to ask you guys to please make masks optional and that it be up to the parents. For anyone who feels that way, we have a petition on change.org. Dr. Micah, in your Friday message, you stated a vote by the school board is not required to end the mask mandate, as it expires on its own at the end of summer. But you did not answer the direct question that many parents have on their mind, which is, will our kids have to wear a mask in the 2021-22 school year? It's really not enough to simply say that the mask mandate will just expire on its own. Parents need to hear that the board has a definitive plan for the upcoming school year. And we would like a vote on this tonight. Parents need time to plan on the proper education and environment for their children. So to respect the parents of any ISD, we would like to know in advance what the plans are. At the last meeting, there was a false premise that was discussed. One of the board members said a great majority of students are doing just fine in masks, and it was referencing when y'all are visiting campuses. I disagree with that. The kids have been conditioned to conform and not speak out. My son is in 2nd grade, and he is scared to remove his mask. I also heard at the last board meeting that the teachers were encouraged to give children a mask break. My kids' teachers are not doing that. I have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, except for recess and when they're eating lunch. And that was just a recent change. Also, at the last board meeting, one of the board members, one of the gentlemen, stated that wearing a mask was similar to having a dress code. A mask is a device that inhibits the breathing and oxygen flow. It is not even comparable to a student who shows up with blue hair or the wrong kind of clothes. The social impact of our children needs to be considered. Kids need to see people's faces and expressions. The mask is robbing our children of what should be the happiest time in their lives, and instead there is increased anxiety, depression, and social issues. So what are you as a board going to do? Are you going to listen to all the opinions and take that into consideration? How will any ISD families be affected by the things that you guys do? Parents are just asking for a choice and control over their children. Parents also want to know that our concerns are being heard.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Summer Broom.
The board's decision on the COVID protocol.
Please just state your name for the record.
Summer Broom.
Thank you.
I thought since you had just said it. The board's decision on the COVID protocol and mask requirements has brought the magnet programs to their knees in a matter of one school year. Last year, I would have been the #1 cheerleader for my son's program, as well as many of the other magnet programs. This year, due to the board's protocol, the magnet programs were forced to be hybrid all year. So this year, my son and all of the other magnet students missed out on so much. They have not been able to do many of their classes because students can't touch the equipment. My son's teachers were actually instructed to only do as much or as little as each teacher felt comfortable with. Unfortunately, many teachers took this opportunity to do as little as possible. I request that you make public what the procedure for the magnet schools will be for the next school year. Now let's look at some facts. Parents per any ISDs reporting the cases for April and May, there has been between 13 and 39 cases out of 64 1,215 students. This is an average of 0.04% in cases. The absolute highest amount of cases that NEISD has logged was in January 4th through the 10th with 186 cases, which is still only 0.2%. And as Dr. Mike has stated in one of his videos, students are not the super spreaders that you were told that they would be. The board's communication to the public stated that their opinion on the mask policy was evenly split. But upon watching video of the April 5th meeting, 14 of the 24 speakers preferred mask choice. That is nearly 60% choosing mask choice, hardly an even split. Another fact, a vote was never taken whether the mask requirements would remain in place. The only vote that occurred was to approve the modifications to the mask requirements. It certainly would be interesting to know the consensus of the 400 plus emails that you have received from parents on this topic and what the percentage of them were in favor of mask choice. We request that you follow the facts and vote now regarding the mask policy for the 21-22 school year. You were able to vote on the school calendar, and therefore you should be able to do the same for this, so that parents can make an informed choice on where they will be sending their child to school next year. By you continuing to wait to make a decision, you are pigeonholing the parents so they have no alternative as far as school goes. Your numbers are extremely low. All staff has been given the opportunity to receive the shot, and NEISD never even reached 1% in positivity.
That's time.
Thank you.
Bill, I probably will mispronounce it, LeBrer.
Hi, I'm Bill LeBrer, and thank you for your time. On March 25th, 2021, the TA put out some guidelines regarding health and hygiene practices, masks. The last sentence of the subsection 2 states, the governing board of a school system may modify or eliminate by formal action the above mask-related mandate. I realize you have put out a statement that the mask mandate date expires at the end of this upcoming summer session, so there's nothing to act upon for next school year. However, I am requesting that the board be proactive and rule that masks will be optional next school year, regardless of the TEA recommendations. We can debate the science ad nauseum. I choose not to. My point focuses on the fact that there are medical exemptions to the mandate. Some examples could be asthma, anxiety disorders, and mental health, to name a few. However, it is incumbent upon the parent to advocate for their child. I didn't find any information on your website indicating there are exemptions to the mask mandate. Some parents may not be aware of the exemptions, and if they are aware, some parents are just not proactive. Some parents are just, or their child doesn't express their suffering to the parent. Asthma affects approximately 9% of children in the U.S. I did notice that your website states your child's campus nurse is an advocate for your child with asthma to have normal quality of life. The flaw I see with this exemption is that it creates an unwanted stigma to the student. Some medical conditions, such as anxiety disorders, are not known by other students. Certainly, not wearing a mask draws attention to the student that most students don't welcome. What isn't known is how many children are silently suffering with their masks. If the nurse is the advocate for the asthmatic student to have a normal quality of life, I ask this board to be an advocate for all students to have a normal quality of life by declaring masks optional for the next school year, and thus reducing any stigma associated to exemptions for medical conditions. Making masks optional also relieves the child who suffers silently with their masks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Chapman.
Good evening.
Hi. Just state your name, please.
Linda Chapman.
Thank you.
So my understanding is that you guys don't plan to renew the mask mandate, just going to let it expire. But in my opinion, that is not good enough, because the problem with it is that we have 3 more weeks left of the regular school year and all summer long. If you folks know now that it is acceptable to stop mandating masks, why are you waiting 4 months to do so? Take a vote and end it tonight. I believe that all of you probably already know most of what I'm about to say about wearing masks, but if you've been listening to nothing but the lies of the mainstream media, then some of this might be new to you. First, masks are unnecessary. Children are at minimal risk of having severe effects of COVID, and research has shown that children are not substantial sources of transmission. That fact alone should be enough to not require children to wear masks, but there is much more to support the fact that masks are unnecessary, not just for children, but for all people. There are so many ways to prevent getting COVID by taking some basic vitamins and minerals, or even using a prophylactic dose of hydroxychloroquine. If someone does get COVID, it is safely and effectively treatable with hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, or budesonide. Yes, the mainstream media has lied to everyone and hidden the truth, since the intent all along has been to push a dangerous experimental vaccine. But the fact remains that COVID is easily treatable. Then, to top this point off, any adult who wants one of these experimental vaccines can now easily get it. Heck, they're bribing everyone with donuts and other goodies to get it at this point. So for these reasons, masks are completely unnecessary. Second, masks are useless. Putting on a mask is nothing more than anxiety management for the population. The coronavirus is substantially smaller than the pores on your mask, therefore it goes right through the mask. So wearing a mask does not protect you. It is like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence. Third, masks are unsafe. Frequent mask wearing can cause excess carbon dioxide in the bloodstream due to continually inhaling back the carbon dioxide that your lungs have expelled. This also causes hypoxia, where you have decreased oxygen. Decreased oxygen can result in shortness of breath, wheezing, coughing, feelings of choking, and severe shortness of breath after physical activity. Wearing a mask lowers your immunity and also puts you at risk for viral infection, because bacteria can grow on the mask itself from prolonged usage and can slip through your nose and mouth. You are breathing in what your body is trying to expel out. That doesn't even get into the fact that most masks that people are wearing are just plain nasty, worn for multiple days at a time, worn into the bathrooms. You get the point. If we were to test probably even everybody in here and everybody out there, their masks, they'd probably come back with some pretty nasty
Time's up.
stuff. Thank you.
Daniel Schroeder.
Good evening, Dr. Micah and the Northeast ISD School Board. I'm a bus mechanic for the school district.
Just state your name, please, for the
I'm
record.
sorry. Daniel Schroeder.
Thank you.
I'm a bus mechanic for the Northeast ISD School District at the Broadway shop. I'm here to ask you, or request you to raise the pay scale for bus mechanics from a grade 6 to a grade 7. The reason I'm requesting this is that building maintenance crews, which I'm defining as plumbers, electricians, and HVAC personnel for the schools and administrative buildings, are paid at a grade 7. First of all of us are required to have license. I have to, by EPA law, have to have an EPA license 609, which is required for my job because all NEISD route buses are currently AC'd. So it's illegal for me to be touching Freon and not have that license. That this district or myself could be fined, I believe $10,000. That's the last time I looked. Also, I have a CDL, which is required to drive the school buses by state law. Plus, I have a Region 20 class in student management. Currently, maintenance personnel do not have a CDL. They can operate with a normal Class C license, didn't have any of that specialized training, and so that's actually in excess of what the maintenance personnel have, as well as all maintenance personnel are supplied their tools by the school district. As a shop mechanic, I provide my own tools, which amounts to several $1,000s. I contacted my local insurance agent. He cannot put insurance on my tools, which a private sector mechanic could get because they're stored at a government facility, and there's a state law against him insuring something on public property, which is the school district. Finally, I'm required to a lot of times work in unpredictable environments. Just on Saturday, we got a call, and I had a bus broke down in the middle of 281. So I had to respond to that call. I was at my apartment. My supervisor called me. We went out there, got it taken back. I think total since I've been with the district, I've been on 410 at night 2 or 3 times getting buses off. I know that that's not the most predictable environment, and so I would like to be compensated at least equal to the other people, because I believe would be a fair concept. I'm not asking for anything more than what they get. I would believe it would just be fair for equality that as a bus mechanic, I get paid equal to what other tradesmen are. And I would invite any one of you to come see us at the shop, see what we do, because I think that might give you a better picture of why I'm requesting to get paid a certain rate. If you could, I know that obviously I work at the Broadway location. There's also one off of 281 that services the Johnson and Reagan clusters. Well, thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Greg Rule.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Greg Rule, and I'd like to talk to you very briefly about the mask mandate. I come here as a parent of NAISD students, but also as a research scientist and a professional licensed engineer who has worked in professional protective equipment. I have done testing of equipment. I understand how it works, and I have also had to educate people on how to use it and what it's used for and when. And I want to provide you with some just basic information and an understanding, and that way you would have a confidence that when you are faced with the decision, and you no doubt will be faced with the decision this fall regarding extending the mask mandate, that you are confident in your decision that ending that mask mandate is absolutely the best decision to be made, not just for our children, but for the teachers in these schools as well. And there's two primary reasons why that is the case. First of all and foremost is that children are not a significant vector for COVID. We have seen numerous studies that have been published by the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics that have demonstrated in clear numbers that very few infections are transmitted by children. They do happen, but they're extremely rare, and children are not as susceptible as the adult population to COVID-19 infections as well. Their severity when they do get it is lower. Those who do get it severely are usually, or almost 99.999% of the time, due to the fact that they are suffering from other severe comorbid conditions, primarily diabetes, which places them at risk. But all of that notwithstanding, the other issue is the performance of the masks themselves. These masks that we are wearing do not actually have any real impact on the transmission of viruses like COVID-19. There's been numerous studies. I can provide you with copies of some of these peer-reviewed public papers that have been published in numerous journals that have actually, there's one that actually did a very controlled clinical trial of 446 subjects, half of them with COVID-19 and half of them without COVID-19, where they looked at them being in close proximity, wearing the masks, and they found that there was no impact on mask wearing, whether or not the infected person wore the mask or the non-infected person wore the mask, on whether or not that virus was transmitted between the various participants in these studies. There are some studies that claim that there has been an impact from mask wearing, but the problem with these studies is that they did not control for how many patients actually had COVID-19 within these studies. They also had numerous other positive virus infections within these studies as well, so they were muddying the results with people that had multiple comorbid infections, and they were not precisely controlling whether or not people were infected or not infected in these studies. And so the issue is we are trying to protect our children. Our main goal is to create a safe, effective learning environment for our children by covering up not just their faces. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Patsy Esterline.
Good evening, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I'm Patsy Esterline, president of the Northeast AFT. Our address is 10615 Perrin Vital, Suite 203, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Apparently, Northeast ISD is going to receive at least some of the federal coronavirus money it is entitled to, although we look forward to the presentation later to see how the money is to be dispersed. A priority of that money should go to ensuring that students are caught up. A second priority should be increasing the pay of teachers and support personnel. Northeast AFT asks that the teachers, librarians, nurses, counselors, as well as other professional job categories like bus mechanics, receive at least a 4% pay increase along with adjustments to the hiring or salary schedule. There should be a greater separation between the teacher steps, which would mean an adjustment throughout the teacher schedule. For paraprofessionals and auxiliary personnel, we ask that a living wage of $15 be adopted and that proportional adjustments be made throughout the pay family, ensuring there is no compression. We also request a 4% pay raise be applied to each paraprofessional and auxiliary personnel pay family. Both the needs of the students and employees must be addressed. We realize this will be a budgetary challenge, but with the help of the federal money, we believe it can be reached. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy Van Horn.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, my name's Tammy Van Horn. I'm here on behalf of all my 5 grandchildren that are in this district. And I'm here to throw some stats just for fun, or not. So what alarms me is that we are making our children, my grandchildren and our children in this district wear masks for 8 to 10 hours a day. And we have little children that are having mental breakdowns and other ones that are just so glued to their mask they can't go anywhere or do anything without it. And we're doing all this because only 282 kids in the entire country have passed away. Only 282. We've had 42,000 die of all kinds of other things, but we've had 282 die of COVID. We've had suicides is another big one. We've had over 15,000 during COVID kill themselves. 15,000 children. Last year, the year before, the school district year, was only 3,000. So we went from 3,000 to 15,000 children killing themselves because they're not able to go to prom, they're not able to go to any of the activities, they've missed, everything, they can't socialize with their friends, they're having to wear masks during all their activities. I've been to my granddaughter's games when she was playing volleyball and having to wear a mask. It was ridiculous. I have the stats went up 57% for suicide for children ages 10 to 14. 57% went up. For kids 14 to 20, went up 76%. That's alarming. That is really sad. We need to really rethink what we're doing here, and that's what I'm here for, my grandchildren. Let's take the masks off. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. A, principal of MacArthur High School. Do I have a motion to approve the principal of MacArthur High School as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for non-renewal of Chapter 21 term contract employee, no action. Item 3, introductions. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. It is my pleasure to announce that the new principal of MacArthur High School will be Joaquin Hernandez. He is currently the principal at Wood Middle School.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, presentations. A, federal stimulus update. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I call Brian Moy, our Executive Director of Finance and Accounting, to the podium. Tonight, we're bringing you updates on ESSER 3. We've gotten some more information in the last few weeks. Back in March 1st, we brought you an update on ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 and hold harmless, and tonight we have more details to provide for you all on ESSER 3. Brian?
Thank you, Dan. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. As you know, the American Rescue Plan Act was passed in March and did include additional funds, stimulus funds for education. On April 28th, the governors office put out a press release saying that they were going to then start to release those funds to school districts. The American Rescue Plan, or ARP, included third round of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, ESSER. So I'll be referring to this as ESSER 3. You may also see it referred to as ARP ESSER. So nationwide, this round of ESSER was $122 billion. Texas got $12.4 billion of that. They get to hold on to $1.2 billion and create programs of their own with that money, and $11.2 billion is designated to be distributed to local education agencies. Of that, Northeast ISD is slotted to receive $117 million. The first 2/3 we will be able to start drawing down once we get all of our paperwork into the e-grant system at TEA. And then the last third, $39 million or so, we will not have access to because the state of Texas has to wait until their plan on how to use ARP funds is approved at the federal level. The federal government has not even released that 1/3 of funds to the state at this point. So $117 million, let's put that into perspective. After the Great Recession, you remember the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, we went through several rounds of funding, all of which was supplant. But even then, I mean, in total, over 3 years, if you take all of the ARA funding, whether it be state's fiscal stabilization fund, education jobs fund, additional IDEA, title, McKinney-Vento, it all totaled $70 million. And we thought that was a big deal back then. Now we have one pot of money that is $117.1 million. There are 2 documents that we will have to produce in order to get the ESSER funds, be eligible for the other ESSER funds. The first is called the Plan for Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services. So in that plan, we have to address health and safety of educators, students, and staff. We have to specifically address what we will or maybe even not do regarding several areas of CDC safety recommendations. And again, we just have to make sure that we are addressing students, not only their academic needs, but their social, emotional, and mental needs. Now, a lot of this, I'll put a little snippet of what's on our website, the Back to School Safety Plan, which you amended last month. So a lot of what is in there will be also in the Safe Return Plan, but then we need to grab other things that aren't there and make it one consolidated. Like one thing that we have to address is how do we do testing and how do we do contact tracing? Well, obviously we have all that over in health services. We just need to get it all combined into one. The second thing we need to do is create what's called a district ARP ESSER plan. This basically is just putting a report on our website that says, what are we going to do with the money? How are we going to implement prevention and mitigation strategies for us? This is federal lingo, so a lot of school districts have not opened across the country. So it says to open schools. Well, for our case, what are we going to do to make sure that we stay open? And then, so you're going to see there's some crossover between the safety plan and the how we're going to use the ESSER funds plan. Second, we have to use 20% of our allocation to address academic impact of lost instructional time. That is the federal definition or phrase for learning loss, because of course they had to use more words. Learning loss wasn't good enough. And it has to be through evidence-based interventions. We are still awaiting rules on a lot of this. Then we basically have to say, what are we going to do with the other 80%? And there are 18 very broad areas that we can spend on. So it does provide us a good deal of flexibility for the local district to decide what's best for them on how to utilize these funds. We also have to make sure that we have in the plan, we respond to needs of students that were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, whether that be minorities, eco-dis, foster, all that kind of situation. Specifically, we must engage in quote-unquote meaningful consultation with various stakeholders, including students, family, teachers, administrators. Actually, the list is very long. It goes down to even, different student advocacy groups. So these funds do not come with a supplement versus supplant requirement. So although ESSER funds can be used for a non-supplemental purpose, there are things that we just need to be really smart and deliberate about when developing the plan and deciding what to put into the spending for that fund. So if we shift local spending into the federal ESSER fund, that could impact our ESSA maintenance of effort. Basically, for title, you have to make sure that you're showing to DOE that you're not simply taking title funds and using them to replace. You need to maintain your local effort in addition to receiving the federal. But this is not new. This is something we go through every year. But now that we could have the opportunity to lower local spending in the general fund and have that spending be in a federal fund, that falls into the calculations for this maintenance of effort. Same thing specifically with spending on special education students. There is, under IDEA, different MOE calculation. Again, we do MOE every year. We pass every year, just letting us know that we just need to be very, again, deliberate with our intentions for using this money. Something that is new, like I said, MOE is not new, but now there is a maintenance of equity component to using ESSER funds. Basically, you cannot lower spending or staffing at what's considered a high poverty campus at a level that is greater than the reductions you made either district-wide or what would be considered a non-high poverty campus. So in the American Rescue Plan, a high poverty school is defined as the highest quartile of schools based on percentage of EcoDis students. So for us, that's 17 schools that have the highest rate of EcoDis. And I'm not saying we're doing this, but I wanted to give an example of what this means. So there's at the bottom a very simplistic hypothetical example. Larkspur is on the high poverty list. Stone Oak is not. They both have 7 kindergarten teachers this year. If we were to say we're going to take 3 kindergarten teachers out of the general fund and fund them next year out of ESSER funds, but we don't take 3 kindergarten teachers out of Stone Oak, then we have reduced the staffing levels at a high poverty school disproportionately than a non-high poverty school. And ESSER says you can't do that. So again, we just need to be very careful and deliberate with every choice we make in what are we going to spend these ESSER 3 funds on. And I can only talk to you about this at a very high level because the guidance we've received to date is limited. The Federal Register, what is in there, things that I refer to here, such as stakeholder input, CDC guidance, MOQ, MOE, it's all interim. They've only published interim rules. Nothing is finalized yet. TEA's guidance on this consists of 1 FAQ. That's not even all that long yet. The district has until July 21 to submit its application, and pre-award costs are allowable. Why is that important? Well, some districts may say, well, I want to hurry up and get that money. I've got summer school coming up, and I want to be able to put my June summer school costs in the ESSER fund. Well, you don't have to rush, because when it says pre-award costs are allowable, it means that if we were not to get our application approved until, let's say, July 10th, but extended summer program is an allowable cost under ESSER, that we can go back and recode all of summer school to the ESSER fund. It's a pre-award allowable cost. So later on this evening, you're going to have the budget amendment that increases the budget for this expanded summer program. Because we don't have the notice of grant award yet, we can't just say, well, we don't need that budget because we know we're going to do it with ESSER. But so we're going to start off having everything in the general fund with this budget amendment, but as soon as the NOGA is approved, notice of grant award, if we decide that that summer program should be in the ESSER 3 fund, we will just simply reclassify everything, and it will no longer affect the general fund. You notice we're talking ESSER 3, and we haven't even, they skipped right over ESSER 2. ESSER 2 came out of the second stimulus bill, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. ESSER 2 nationwide was $54 billion. Texas received $5.5 billion, and Northeast is scheduled to receive $48.7 million. But why haven't they just said we're going to release the money the way they did with ESSER 3? Because ESSER 3 had more specific requirements on states to just say, you get to this point, you release funds, you can't play around with it and find something else to do with it. Well, that's not the case with ESSER 2. The Texas legislature is still deciding what it wants or thinks it can do with ESSER 2 funds, which is interesting. It'll probably happen in what's called Conference Committee on Senate Bill 1. So Senate Bill 1 is this year's state budget, or this biennium state budget. Passed the Senate, went to the House. The House made changes, sent it back. The Senate said, we don't like these changes, so you have to set up a conference committee to negotiate the differences. We assume that somewhere in conference committee, they will make a decision on how to use ESSER 2, but it'll likely be late May before we learn the result. And we thought when the budget bills came out, we thought it was just a no-brainer. They're going to supplant with ESSER 2 funds. They're going to do an accounting trick on the August 2023 foundation school payment, push it off a month so it enters a new biennium, and all the numbers worked out. Well, now the comptroller has updated his revenue estimate for the next biennium, giving the legislature the ability to spend $3.1 billion more than they thought when they crafted the budget bills back in January. Now, that closes the gap. The budgets are still, right now, I believe, higher than the allowable spending, so something is going to have to change. And some of that something is going to be ESSER 2 funds, we are almost positive. But we will find out in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And Brian, can I just interject a couple of things?
Absolutely.
And the commissioner's call that we had last week, he was talking about, we have to spend these funds by September of 2024. But one of the things he cautioned a lot of the districts was it's quite a windfall, I guess, and we got to figure out, and there's a lot of things we have to still calculate. One of the things he was talking about was be careful on what and how you spend it, because he's looking at maybe having to extend those 3 years by another 3 years. So in 2 years, they meet again, the legislature meets again, and depending on how things are going, and then 2 years after that. So in 4 years, we should have been able to have spent our monies, but we might have to be real logistical with our dollars to make sure that we can carry some of these spendings for future years, not just the 3 years. So I know it's kind of talking around in a circle, but I just wanted to caution the board. There's still a lot of stuff that we still haven't done. Like Brian said, they're still putting out the information, the FAQs. So we're still trying to get on top of how to spend and how we're going to do it. We're working with Mr. Jarrett's group also to determine how we're going to spend. But Brian and his team, looking at MOEs and MOQs, we just have to be real careful on how we approach the spending in the future.
Mr. Villarreal, are you speaking to the ESSER 2 funds or the ESSER 3 funds, or both?
ESSER 3.
Okay.
ESSER 2, like Brian was saying, I mean, they haven't even told us how much we're going to get. He did kind of insinuate that maybe the commissioner I'm talking about, that we might get some, so he might know probably what's coming down, but it was kind of, it took us aback a little bit by when he said about making sure that we're careful with these funds because we just don't know what the future is going to bring us, so.
Mr. Villarreal, explain why that's concerning. I think it's good to go back in history again to what Brian
Right.
spoke about with those federal dollars and then what happened after.
And the Aram dollars that Brian was talking about back 2009, 2010, what we did is we ended up using all of the dollars like we're supposed to. Like Brian was saying, we used all 70 million. Other districts, what they did was they kind of supplanted what they were already spending. Neighbor to the west of us ended up dropping a ton of money down to the bottom line. So we used it, but what happened is after the monies ran out, general fund had to take over those costs, as opposed to districts, like I said, some of the other districts who are sitting on 6 months, 7 months of fund balance. They've been sitting on that for 10 years because they just never spent it. They used it to supplant.
And what happened in the ledge shortly after all of this money was spent? What happened to school finance?
It started crashing, and one of the things was in between all that time also, we had some state mandated raises that we had to give, even though they were not funding those raises. So it was kind of like a perfect storm in 2011 and 2013, where the state said, hey, sorry, we're going to have to hold back some of your money, or we just don't have enough money, so you have to make do. Really, 2019 was the first time in 10 years that the state actually gave us more money to be able to do our budgets.
So what Dan referring to is back in 2009, yes, new money came in, but they mandated a raise for teachers, librarians, counselors, nurses, speech paths for the first year of the biennium. And then for the second year of the biennium, it was determined, it may not have even been a legislative intent, but the Attorney General said the way that House Bill 3646 was written is that you couldn't even freeze salaries for the 10-11 year. So all teachers and librarians got their step again. Then in 2011, the money goes away and we had done 2 years of raises. One-time money on ongoing expenses.
And we were pretty tight. I mean, we dropped below 2 months of operating at that time, and we had to do some cuts here and there just to try to maintain. So, yeah, I mean, when the commissioner says to be logistical about what you're going to spend, and I kind of tend to believe it because Brian and I have seen what's happened in the past when the state's gotten some money and given it to us, but then they end up in 2 or 3 years cutting us back. So just to be careful.
And another thing, just why I keep saying like the words like thoughtful and deliberate is my senior director of grants administration was on a federal webinar, and when I talked about just the enormity of the numbers compared to 2009 through 11 stimulus, they said, no, Office of Inspector General will be coming to look at you when all is said and done. We will be getting federal audits on all this money, in addition to the work that our external auditors come and do every year.
And the federal government has a lot of requirements, and they really look at it with a fine-tooth comb. So we just have to be really, really careful to meet those MOEs, because as it is now, I mean, there's some things you can't supplant, but then there's some things you can't, and you have to look at the percentages, whether it's comp ed or special ed or those. So we're looking at it, and as we get more details and more information, we'll be able to make better estimates as to where and how we can spend.
Do you have a question?
I do just have one question. And actually, that was one of my questions was, July is not very far away. Well, our budget is the end of this month, and so I don't envy what the next couple of weeks is going to look like for you. But that was my concern, was that we would make these changes and implement a budget, and then we would think it would change in midstream, and that has happened to us and happened in education for years. Nothing changes there. If we think about it, the last big increase we got was funded, and the changes I made were funded on sales tax for oil and gas.
Yes, ma'am.
And where is oil and gas now?
And I would caution,
I'm nervous. I am a little nervous, and I think we should be cautious as a board. Not that we don't want to do all these wonderful things. We'll do what they tell us to do, but I worry that they're going to come back with changes, and then we'll be stuck.
Right, and we can be
where we were.
conservative. Once we submit that plan, it's something that's kind of like a living plan. We can make some changes. So I would just be as conservative as possible until we can get some of those numbers finalized, or some of the things, because the federal government and the state are on two different time zones. So depending on who's saying what, that's what we have to really look at.
And so in that list, though, of 18 different areas, the broad areas, included in that, though, was compensation for teachers, staff, should we choose to do that? Was that part of
That would probably fall into the category of, and here's what I love, the last of those 18 categories is anything else the LEA needs to do in order to maintain staffing levels and operations of their district.
Repeat that again, please.
Oh, I don't know if I can. I was paraphrasing.
That was really good.
Basically, anything related to, staff and salaries needed to maintain employment and the operations of the district. Very open-ended final use.
Ms. Winkling, I think they've beat around. I'll just be very blunt about it. These are one-time monies.
Okay.
They run out. Using this money on ongoing costs such as pay increases are ongoing costs. So in 2024, if you all said, hey, we want to give a 5% pay raise, we would have to figure out how to fund it with our general fund. This is what happened to us back in 2009, is a lot of these things were done in ongoing costs, and then it came time, and it just got all dropped to the bottom to figure out how to fund it. So you have to be thinking of these monies have an expiration date, so they're not forever. Truly, House Bill 3 is not forever. The ledge could always vote and do away with it, right? But these monies are one time. So we have to think about, and what the commissioner spoke with us about at length is really about being very smart with these monies so that even though they have to be spent by 2024, if you swap dollars from your general revenue to ESSER dollars, those monies then can go into your fund balance to be extended another 1 or 2 years to keep, for instance, summer school or something like that. So, again, the thing is, like, if you take a look at Brian's last slide here about the $1.67 billion, right, more, it was back in November that he said we had a deficit of $4.65 billion. So it's been a huge swing right there from the state. So, there's a lot of unknown, and we're going to have to. It's kind of like House Bill 3. We had to figure it out at the last minute, and here we are again, right? But Brian and Dan and their team, look, they're going to figure it out, and they're on calls, everything that we can be, to try to see what are going to be the guidelines around this. Because once we get our notice of award, we have 30 days. That's when the time starts ticking, correct?
Well, we have 30 days to get the plan posted, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Anything else?
I had a quick question, Brian. Where did I have my note? Oh, there it is. You talk about the pre-award monies, I guess? Do we know that, does that basically just go back to whenever the legislation was enacted?
I believe they're going back to the start, what they considered the start of the disaster, which is all the way back to March of 2020.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so not just
Correct.
from this year, but
Correct.
all the way back a year ago. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Item B, Student Ridership Technology System Pilot. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to ask Executive Director Mr. Jack DeForest to come to the mic and address this topic. Mr. DeForest.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and distinguished guests, thank you for a few minutes to talk about our student ridership technology pilot test that we have been running this semester. And as I spend less than 10 minutes, I hope, to talk about that, I want to paint a typical day in transportation for folks who may have never been there. When we unlock the building at 5 a.m. and the dispatcher starts looking for drivers to arrive, the first buses are out the gate around 5:30, and for the next 60 minutes, they are rolling out as many as 250 routes a day from 3 different locations. Those buses will be staffed by their regular driver in an ideal scenario, but like any big operation, if we have 90 or 95% attendance, we have to backfill with substitute or what we call spare drivers as many as 15 to 20 plus routes. So who are those 15 to 20 substitute or spare drivers? They are my mechanics. They're my routers. They're my assistant supervisors. They are any of the 65 or so full-time staff members that make up our department of more than 400 employees, of which about 300 are part-time drivers and another 100 are your bus assistants, primarily to help on special needs buses. So when those spare drivers go out, they go out with a left-right sheet in hand. And the left-right sheet will say something like right on Marshall Road, left on 281, right on Sonterra. And they can read these in the dark, and they all have great near vision. And and this will tell you Agora Stone Oak Apartments, 1207 Agora Palm, 6:32 a.m., and most of them will nail it. And if they're 1 or 2 minutes late, that's okay. They can never be early. Not every student will be there. This is just the elementary route for one bus. They'll have 2 more sheets, one for the middle school and one for the high school. So being a spare driver requires you to be able to read well and in the dark and up close, things that are hard to do as you age. But we knew there were a couple of companies in the space of ridership technology that had programs to help deal with the challenge of running bus routes, not necessarily with the same guy or girl that's at the wheel of that bus day in and day out. Make no mistake, I've got about 65 people a year that don't miss a single day. And we are fortunate that their family circumstances and their personal health and even their car got them to work every single of 180 days in the year. So our ridership technology program that we have looked at just this semester, I've got a video clip and a couple of slides to get out of here in about 5 minutes. So, Jason, can you play the Vimeo before I go through the slides? This is about 2 minutes, and it'll give you a high-level overview of what the company has that we have just chosen for this pilot test. And then I'll talk through the slides right quick because they speak to our operation. So the video, please, Jason. So as you can see, it's a wealth of information that the program provides to the driver. And I would call out that a regular driver who doesn't miss a day, they already know who all the students are. They know them by name. They've developed relationships. Some of our drivers have been on the same route for longer than any of us have been employed here, and they've seen kids arrive as kindergarten students and graduate, and that's good stuff. There's some good stories out there. But let me talk about the pilot program. We chose Regency Place. It just has 3 routes, and it's pretty close to the central terminal. The unique thing about Regency Place as a bilingual campus is those kids come from 4 different elementary schools in the area. And you can see Oak Grove, Clear Spring, Northwood, and Cerna. We knew that if the software in this pilot test with this firm that we were testing would work on that scenario, it would work for an elementary where the students just come from that attendance area. The badge looks like that. Every child has one, and they lasso them to their backpack, and amazingly, the kids pull them out like a passenger fixing to board an airplane, and they have them in their hand before they get ready to climb up the steps. It's impressive. Our driver, Jesse Villalobos up there, is watching them. He mastered this technology in a couple of hours. One of the drivers needed a couple days, and then the other driver was like a couple of minutes. So it's easy to use software. The equipment in the bus looks like this. That's a reader that simply reads a small RFID chip that's in this tag that only has the student's ID number. That ID number is read by the reader. It goes into the system, and that's how it brings up the child's picture on the tablet. And if they're at the right stop, it's a green light. And if it's a child that's maybe getting on the wrong bus, which is important in the afternoon particularly, it would give a red X and allow the driver to deal with it. So while all that is happening in the transportation department and at the campus, there are dashboards that the principal or any administrator or my supervisors could monitor to see who is boarding the bus in the afternoon, who is leaving the bus. There are features for our special needs riders that capture some of the federal reporting data that allow us to be not only really accurate with what's required for special needs transportation, but fast about it too. Right now there's a lot of paper that gets chased around to account for special needs ridership, and that is part of the smart tag system with the very latest federal guidance built into the back end of their software. As well, a guardian's name can be put into the software so that if there's a question about who's picking up a student, this system can be loaded with that name. And we have a system we use now, but it's kind of, it's based on a spreadsheet and perhaps a radio call back to dispatch with this software that can be highly automated. So, it worked at Regency, it worked well. What questions can I answer before I get down from here and we move on?
Questions?
I have a question about the, you were just saying at the end there about releasing the students to the parent or guardian. Do we, at the elementary school level, is it a high percentage that those parents meet the kids at the bus stop? I mean, I understand we're talking about little kids, but how do we
We
know
require a guardian for pre-kinders and kinders.
Okay.
And then it's really interesting whether there are parents there or not. We will occasionally have a second or a third grader who doesn't want to get off the bus because the parent is not there and has always been there. Occasionally we'll deliver that student back to the school because if there's anything that doesn't seem right to a driver, our default is to have the school help us with that.
Yeah. So let's say for, I guess, a 4th or 5th grader, they tag off the bus and we know that they've left the bus.
That's correct. We know where they've left, what time they've left, and if they're attempting to get off at the wrong stop, which if they're new, that can happen. Sometimes they aren't real familiar with their neighborhood in the beginning. It'll give a red X, and the driver can then interpret what he sees and figure out what's going on, which is really important for that substitute or spare driver who can't have all this in their head on the first day, even the second day.
I say, or if they want to get off a stop early with their friend, I guess at that point.
Yeah, we really we discourage that greatly for the elementary kids and try to prevent that in every case.
How did the parents and when they were presented with this, how did they?
So
receive
the parents have seen the badges all semester on their backpacks. The feedback is that they're all pretty impressed by it. There is, I didn't mention, there is an app that comes with this, and if parents choose to download the app, they can follow their child into the bus and out of the bus. So they have the assurance of knowing that the child has boarded at the campus and is on the way home.
So I want to make this clear. It only works when you scan.
Right.
All right? There's no way to know. It's like my badge, right? This doesn't track me until I scan a door. It works the exact same way as a bus. Once that child boards the bus, they scan it. You know the child got on the bus. They scan it to get off, and that's it. That's all you know.
Yeah.
You don't follow them through the day or anything. There's no way to do that.
Sure.
It has to work with that little smart tag. What do you call it? Like an iPad almost, or
right.
whatever it is.
It's an RFID reader that's right there, and it's a short-range reader. That's why you saw them putting their badges right on the reader. It doesn't read at a distance. It's this only follows them on and then off the bus.
And then with those iPad that Dr. Mike was just talking about, I assume we either have protocols and a process in place of where those are secured and how they're overnight and
we
can't
keep
take
them.
home.
Yes, we keep them in dispatch, obviously. Okay. And when you have a pilot test with just 3, that's easy to do.
Sure.
The central terminal, if that were fully stood up, we'd have to park about 150 tablets in dispatch, so we might have to have a cabinet constructed to hold 150.
I was going to say, I think at that point we'd be talking about a pretty high level of security to make sure those things aren't.
Well, we're very
taken
secure. Yeah, the dispatch area is locked up separate from the driver keyboard and lounge and building area, so we think it's pretty secure.
Yeah, and Mr. Byer, I mean, that's not going to do anything other than read a.
Well, it's got children's information,
Well,
and pictures, and that kind of
yeah.
the database. And I know we're talking about cybersecurity.
How does that work?
Point.
How does that work?
So
That's a good question.
The tablet the driver has reads the data from our routing software, and the routing software gets an update overnight from Skyward. So the child's address, the child's identification number, the bus route if the child's bus eligible, it's all the same student data coming out of Skyward into TransFinder and then over to this Smart Tag product.
Got it. Okay.
And it's a secure, cloud link. Everything is encrypted. This company that we've piloted is with 62 school districts nationwide. 20 of them are other than Texas districts, and the other are all in Texas. They've got about a decade of experience with this. And the districts that have it find it to be extremely helpful to keep up with riders and to be able to GPS the bus. We have GPS now, but it's a real entry-level $5 a month per bus GPS. This is be like the one on your phone. It'll tell you if there's probably traffic in the way ahead. A good GPS system.
Well, I'm glad it's successful. And it's helpful to see that company's been around since 2010 or had this since 2010.
Yes, yeah, long. They've been around a long time.
They
Yes.
didn't come around last year and
No.
selling software to people.
Listen, we've had a company try to get us to be their first customer because we've looked at this software for about 4 years with some different companies. This is the long-term company in the industry. The marketing officer for this company was a pastor. He filled in as a special needs bus driver for a year at a district where he lives. And when he got done, he told him, he said, I know a way we can make this better. He had a friend in the software industry. In 2009, they birthed this idea, and it has grown ever since. It's a great product.
And so there's ways that obviously we can allow those kids that either forgot their tags or don't have their tags.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a manual override feature, and the driver can go select the child's name from a list. Because you would be interested to know that the typical elementary bus probably has about 110 to 150 eligible riders, but typically elementary ridership is maybe 75% of the list, so you get 65 or 70 kids on the bus. And that list is available on the tablet at each bus stop.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
President. Mr. Forrest, so we don't have a systemic problem. Y'all have just been trying to be proactive and looking at efficiencies and developing this.
I wouldn't call it systemic. And I'm just going to say it, we have never lost anybody's child. We've misplaced a few every year, and we find them in 5 or 15 minutes. It's not a massive problem because our default is when somebody doesn't know what to do is just don't let them off the bus. This will go a long way towards eliminating those onesies and twosies that have happened over the years I've been around.
Great. And so it sounds like it's passive ID, not active RFID, right? Because it's short.
Right, it's passive.
It's passive, and it just has student name, address, and
no,
a picture,
just
or is it
the
all Skyward data?
Just the student ID number is all that's on the chip.
Okay.
And then all the Skyward data is running between the Skyward and the Transfinder, so that when the chip is read, then it displays who the student is.
Yeah, just as Mr. Barr saying, the privacy concern, and then obviously if parents wanted to opt out, would that be an option? Then the bus driver does the manual input type option, because some people don't like all the tags on their kids' stuff. Some people.
Yeah, none of the parents at Regency have wanted to opt out. Every child has one, and only a tag or two has been misplaced or lost over the course of the semester. I think the parents like it because they get some security about their child being accounted for on the bus ride.
But are we planning on going district-wide, and if so, would there be an opt-out option for those parents that maybe don't want that type of data?
We have not really fully discussed that. And if we did implement, we think we would implement a cluster at a time because it would be a very big project. And so as not to overwhelm everybody, you could stand up one high school cluster or two. We really think just following the elementary students is important.
Yeah.
But my driver that figured the tablet out in 5 minutes, she actually used it for her middle and high school students just because she could figure it out real quick. And they were kind of impressed that their picture and their information was on the tablet when she would board them manually because they didn't have tags.
Well, the tablet route makes sense for GPS. We all drive with our GPS phone. So that
Exactly.
part makes more sense than a piece of paper, which I did not know that they did.
That's how we do it.
That piece of it, I just know there's
Yes,
some
sir.
currents, because then what are the security risks? I know you said it's cloud storage, secure socket layered,
All
but
encrypted.
what security, there are no security concerns then? 'Cause I mean,
Nothing negative that they've shared with us. We visited a school district and asked a little bit about how it's worked out, and a lot of praise for the product. Their only zonk, is that a word? Their only zonk was lazy drivers can check anonymous and board a student without identifying them. And after a few years, some of their drivers got a little bit lazy, and so you have all the dashboard data, and the corrective action was, we don't want to see so many anonymous boardings, please. Use the badge, identify the students.
and if we did this cluster-wide or district-wide, what's the cost, I guess, ballpark?
So
Have we gotten that far yet?
the stand-up cost, the first year gets you all the hardware. They do all the labor to mount and wire the bus and hook the power up. That first year cost is just under $400K. And then it gets cheaper by the year because now you have the equipment, and so your costs go down to $150K or less.
Okay, great.
And do it on a 5-year municipal lease type arrangement, standard in the industry.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Madam
sir.
President.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. DeForest.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a really cool idea.
Thank you.
Item C, Winter Storm Uri repair update. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to ask Dr. Lanford to come to the podium to address this item.
Good evening, President Grona, board members, executive staff, Dr. Micah, and guests. So once again, it's my pleasure to come before you and kind of give you an update on where we are with the damages that we have discovered from Winter Storm Uri. So if you remember when I was here in March, we showed some pictures of the damage that were out there, cooling towers, a fire hydrant that burst at Garner Middle School, and then a air handler unit there at Churchill High School. So prior to the winter storm, just a little bit of a recap of what we did to prepare for it. The maintenance department, we scheduled the heat to run at minimum set points to maintain safe temperatures in all of our facilities. In areas where we knew that toilets would freeze, they were sort of unprotected, some of our outdoor athletic facilities, we actually poured antifreeze in the toilet bowls and the urinals. We went out and spent about 2 weeks wrapping the exposed pipes. We drained pipes where we could, and we had planned on running all of our pumps, water pumps and HVAC pumps, at minimal speeds to circulate water and also the HVAC refrigerants. As we know, that didn't work out as planned, unfortunately, and some of the causes for this catastrophic loss were the record-setting low temperatures, which lasted far beyond the original forecast of like 24 to 48 hours. When it began to go longer and longer than that is when really the problems began occurring. You add on top of that the power failures from CPS Energy, which did not allow any of our electrical equipment to function properly. The pump ceased moving water, so there was no circulation, so then our systems began freezing. Freezing water in the pipes expanded, and that's what caused a lot of the bursting that you saw when we first presented. The other issue that came about was the short cycling of the power. When it would come back on, instead of being at a lower set point, the systems would call for 100% heat, and that would pull a real heavy drain on the system, and so the circuit breakers would trip, and they would have to be, we'd have to go out and manually reset them. Then you add on top of that the failure of the municipal water system, and so we lost water pressure in quite a few of our areas, and so that just exacerbated the situation. Again, the low flow compounded with the freezing because of the lack of circulation. Okay. And so how did we respond to this? Beginning February 16th, the Facility Maintenance and Operations Department, along with our Construction Management and Engineering Department, we met to discuss, control, and repair all of the damage to Northeast facilities. The Operations Department personnel worked throughout the weekend in sub-freezing temperatures and hazardous working conditions to open emergency feeding sites to the community on that Friday. And I think it's been noted that over 12,000 meals were served in a matter of very few hours. And so this was facility maintenance and operations, construction management and engineering, and also school nutrition services. Consequently, that weekend, right before school resumed, NEISD Transportation Department employees came in. They actually came in Friday and on Sunday to make sure that all the buses were going to start and that they were safe for the Monday morning routes. Damage to our chiller units. We had Cibolo Green, which was one 200-ton water-cooled chiller. Churchill High School, a 275-ton air-cooled chiller. At Bush Middle School, 2 of the 325-ton air-cooled chillers were damaged, and MacArthur, 1 150-ton air-cooled chiller was damaged as well. As noted down there at the bottom, the Garner's second chiller and also the MacArthur chiller weren't, we didn't discover those until about a week in when the load started becoming a little bit heavier, temperatures began to rise, and we noticed that they were damaged significantly as well and had to be replaced. Damage to some of our boiler plants. Really, the only one that is still out there is a domestic boiler, which is basically a water heater that serves the old athletic area, and so no real instructional area is impacted, and we're waiting on a contractor to complete those scheduled repairs. damage to the backflow preventers. Say that 3 times fast. You can see the list was extensive: Cibolo Green Elementary, Colonial Hills, El Dorado, Las Lomas, Wetmore, Windcrest, Vineyard Ranch, Madison High School, and also Blossom Athletic Center. All these had significant damage to one or all of the backflow systems. Temporary permanent repairs were made beginning that Wednesday up through that Sunday before we started back on the 22nd. And so again, no instructional times were lost. We have gone back now and we've actually purchased thermal blankets, which you can see on the right side of your screen. Those are custom made for each backflow, and they are fitted, they are reusable. You can open them up in sections and they snap back into place. And you can kind of see on the far left, that's what a lot of the backflows, if you drive through the city, that's what a lot of them look like. They're just wrapped with insulation and foil tape and pink insulation. And so once they're replaced, we're putting the thermal blankets on. And it's important to note that both the campuses with the thermal blankets prior to the freeze that were installed, none of those campuses they experienced no freezing of any of the backflows. So that's why we think it's so important. It's a good investment for the future should such an incident take place again. District fire lines, Madison, the Northeast Agri-Science, Magnet, Garner, Camelot, Cibolo Green, Fox Run, Hidden Forest, Jackson Keller, Stall, Thousand Oaks, Walsham, Wilderness, the Ramick parking garage right behind us, school nutrition, and also facility maintenance experienced some sort of fire line damage, a broken line or a valve, something that damaged the system that had to be replaced by a contractor. The most critical fire line break we've talked about before at Thousand Oaks. 2/3 of the school was flooded, but again, with the we were able to start working on that immediately. In between construction management and the maintenance department, custodial, we were back up and running that Monday for class. Damage to the campus HVAC systems. This includes coils, drives, pumps. I know you've got this a little bit ahead of time, so I won't go through and read every single one. But we are still working on those. Fox Run, I think our guys have, just finished their 72nd solder going through these coils. They find leaks and they go back and, a little bit later they may find another one. But, again, we're at about 90 to 95% complete, and the units that are damaged that still remain, again, have no significant or no impact at all on instruction. Some of the other damage: portable restroom across the district at the elementary schools and at Madison High School. Those have been taken on by engineering, and those will be repaired by a contractor. And they're working on those on a as need, status. As they're needed. It's a critical, depends on how big the population of the school, how much they were used, and so it just depends on it, on that. And so lastly, the total damages in dollars. We are closing the books pretty much at $1.9 million in damage. It's incredible for just a short number of days, but the damage was just, in some cases, just overwhelming. I mean, mind-blowing. We are working with FEMA and our insurance company on recouping all of those losses, and we're working very closely with Mr. Gracia and Mr. Villarreal on those. And so, any questions? But before we have questions, I would like to point out up in the very top right, there's a picture of a buzzard, and you'd wonder why that buzzard is there. It's not to introduce Dan Villarreal. It is, just kidding, sir. No, it is to say that in the midst of everything that was going on, our guys were called out to Eisenhower because a buzzard had decided to make a nest there in the courtyard, and we learned that they are federally protected
That's a federally protected species. And so in the midst of all this, our grounds guys were out there, not sitting on the nest, but, pretty much we had it fenced off and we had, a camera pointed at it to make sure that the little buzzards hatched. And I must say that, Beaky and Junior are just fine and they've moved on. So we did more than our share. So with that being said, any questions?
Well,
Thank you for protecting the buzzard.
Absolutely.
Can I talk about some insurance recoveries that we're trying to do?
Sure.
With risk management, we submitted a request for public assistance disaster recovery on March 4th of 21. But the thing about that is only Class B damages are being looked at. And that's emergency response versus permanent repairs. And the date is 2/14/21 through 2/21/21. Now, we were at Thousand Oaks, his crew was at Thousand Oaks. Now, some of that is considered permanent repair, not emergency repair, so we might not get quite a bit of any of that money through FEMA. But we're submitting by 6/14/21, we're still going to submit the documents. And then FEMA, they're looking for all documents for all losses. And what that means is the state of Texas, if we meet a certain threshold, I think it's 38 million, FEMA will submit or give us more state money. Now, the thing with FEMA is we filed a claim with our insurance company, and our deductible is $100,000. So the only thing FEMA will cover will be the $100,000. The insurance company is the one that's going to have to reimburse us the difference. And you know how insurance companies work. So from now till, we're working with the adjusters, we're working with submitting paperwork, bills, we're doing all of that, but it might take us a while before we do collect anything from the insurance company. So that's kind of from the insurance aspect, I just wanted to let you all know.
Questions? No. Okay, thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right, item 10, report on required board training. A, state board rule on board member continuing education announcement of credit. And I'm just going to read all this. Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I'm required to announce the name of each member who, as of that member's anniversary of election or appointment to the board, 1, has completed the required continuing education, 2, has exceeded the required continuing education, and 3, is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. There are 7 training areas for board member continuing education: local district orientation, orientation to the Texas Education Code, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code, team building, additional continuing education, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals, identifying and reporting abuses, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. For members who still have time remaining to complete required training, I will announce those board members who have scheduled timely training and those who have not yet scheduled the training. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, trustees were provided a temporary suspension from being delinquent as to their continuing education requirements that would otherwise have been due during that time frame. While the requirement for training did not change, the waiver provided temporary relief from deadlines to complete their continuing education requirements, and districts were not required to make their board training announcements in 2020. Consequently, this board training announcement of credit collectively covers the years 2020 and 2021. Okay, so for local district orientation, Mr. Leos and Mr. Hilliard completed their training, their required training. The orientation to the Texas Education Code, Mr. Leos and Mr. Hilliard completed their required training. Post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code, none of us were required to complete that. Team building, the following members have completed the annual team building training: Shannon Grona, Tony Hasso, Sandy Huey, Omar Leos, David Byer, Sandy Winkley, and Terry Williams, and that was for 2020 and 2021, except for Mr. Hasso. Additional continuing education. It's 10 years for the first year members and 10 hours, sorry, for the first year members and 5 hours for subsequent years. The following board members have completed the additional continuing education requirements: Shannon Grona, Tony Hasso, Sandy Huey, Omar Leos for 2021, David Byer, Sandy Winkley, and Terry Williams. The evaluation, student academic performance, and setting goals. The following board members have completed the biennial training on evaluation, student academic performance, and setting goals: Shannon Grona, Tony Hasso for 2020, Sandy Huey, Omar Leos, David Byer, Sandy Winkley, Terry Williams, and Steve Hilliard. For identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children, this training must be completed every 2 years, and Mr. Hilliard, as new board member, has completed that. Exceeding required continuing education. Shannon Grona has exceeded the required amount of continuing education for 2020 and 2021. Tony Hasso has exceeded it for 2020 and 2021. Sandy Huey has exceeded it for 2020 and 2021. Omar Leos has met the required amount of new board member training and has 1 year to fulfill the required amount of continuing education training for the reporting period of 2020. David Byer has exceeded the required amount for 2020 and 2021. Sandy Winkley has exceeded the required amount for 2020 and 2021. Terry Williams has exceeded the required amount for 2020 and 2021. And Mr. Steve Hilliard has met the required amount of new board member training and has 1 year to fulfill the required amount of continuing education training, reporting period 2021. And I think that's what I'm supposed to say. Okay. Anybody have questions about that? All right. Item 11, new business for possible board action. A, instruction and campus administration. 1, possible action regarding approval of employment contracts. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Shyla Whitten, our acting executive director for human resources, will address this item.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Every year in May, we seek board approval for the renewal of employment contracts for the upcoming school year. This year, we are recommending the renewal of approximately 4,300 employees who are, as of today, expected to return for the upcoming year. These employees would be issued either a probationary, Chapter 21 term, or non-chapter contract. Before the board takes action this evening, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Whitten?
I just have one question. Is this a lower number than last year, or are we projecting for next year's enrollment, I guess would be my real question, as we're giving all these contracts? Is that how we do this? I'm new to the board, obviously, so.
So this is approximately the same number we have every year based on what we know today as far as resignations. So employees, when they accept their contract, they have until 45 days before the first day of instruction to resign without penalty. And so we'll still await any person who's made that decision. But this is around the same number that we renew each year.
But is this tied to also enrollment, projected enrollment for next year? Is that how we do the hiring, or is this completely different? Because I was reading through the different type of contracts. I'm trying to make sure I understand it.
Sure, of course. So allocations are based on enrollment, and those numbers that we have as far as staff are included in these that we will continue in the new year. So these are individuals that have already been informed they would have a position based on allocations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Shala.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the proposed recommendations for renewal of employment contracts?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Item B, Business Services. 1, possible action regarding budget amendment number 4. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests. Tonight, we bring you budget amendment number 4 for $2.3 million, and it's for summer school. hopefully, we'll be able to use maybe some ESSER monies, and that's just an amount that we came up with. Hopefully, it'll be less, but we bring this amendment to you for approval.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? I'm sorry. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the budget amendment number 4?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item C, consent. 1, Northeast Educational Foundation. A, Northeast Educational Foundation MOU with NEISD. 2, Business Services. A, waiver of penalties and interest. B, donations. C, 50,000 purchases. 3, operations. A, easement dedication for drainage, streets, utilities, and various service agreements at Driscoll Middle School. 4, minutes from April 2021. 5, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
Yeah. Madam President, can I pull C1A and C2C, please?
C1A and C2C. Okay, Mr. Byer?
3A under operations.
3A. Wait, C, 2C.
It was the same as Mr. Hilliard, but I don't know if it's the same
Okay.
line item.
Okay, anybody else? Ms. Williams? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve consent without C1A, C2C, and C3A?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the motion carries. Okay, C1A.
Thanks, Madam President. For the MOU, I saw there were edits made by Mr. Lopez and accepted. Besides the date, do we know what the other edits were and what the changes were? Oh, hi, how's it going?
Hi, I'm Amy Lane. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I can share a little bit about that. So the only edits for this current MOU are in the term, and what we did is we just made it a little bit more simplified to renew it.
Okay, so just the 1-year extension?
Exactly.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what the edits were. So.
Exactly, and I can share the red line version with you guys as well.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I have on that, Madam
Okay,
President.
thank you. Thank you, Amy. Item C2C, Mr. Hilliard.
Thanks. The question was on the performance planning and consulting services for $175,000. The question is, what specific services are we getting from that consulting service? I'm just trying, is it? Mr. Jarrett, all right. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll let Dr. Diaz do it.
Okay.
What was the question, sir?
The question was, what specific services are we getting from performance planning? It said consulting services, so just trying to figure out what those services are.
So we've had a district initiative for the past 3 years. It's professional learning communities. So it's a collaborative process that the campuses use in order to impact student outcomes. And in the process of the 3 years, we've onboarded almost all of our campuses. This is the last year. So we've got about 12 campuses moving through this PLC process. So this is the company that we contract with that helps support the campuses as they onboard the PLC processes.
So they have specialty skills that we don't have within the district staff?
Yes, sir. And we have talked about a plan of sustainability. So this was a 3-year onboarding program. And Anthony and Jennifer and I are working on ways to do a gradual release.
And this will be the last year, then it sounds like you're getting the last of the 3-year program complete?
And we will continue to use that company to onboard schools when we have new principals or there's turnover. So you'll see that gradually through the years that we've been onboarding the campuses into the PLC process. The contract has gotten smaller and smaller every year because we have less campuses to onboard, but we feel that we probably will use them for the next few years as campus leadership turns over and new people come into the positions.
Okay, and then how do y'all track their effectiveness and that impact on the student outcome? Do y'all have a metric or some way you track to see the effectiveness of them?
Yes, sir. So one of the ways we track the progress of the PLCs is our campus specialists go out and work with the campuses. So our specialists are on the campuses quite a bit. So are our assistant directors, and we are working with Anthony and Alex Vardell to come up with a maybe something in Qualtrics that we can use to better track the progress of them.
Okay, just so that we can see what we're getting for our money and
Yes,
that
sir.
it's effective or not. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. That was it, Madam President.
Okay. Ms. Winkley, item 2C.
Yes, my question is regarding the Riverside Insights testing services. Is this for the discussion we had, I guess, I can't remember if it was last meeting or prior, since all of our students will be tested for GT?
That is
Is
correct.
that to cover?
Yes, ma'am. That's to cover GT testing so that we can expand our testing efforts to make sure more kids are identified that are appropriately placed for GT services.
And I can't recall, has that happened already, that testing for this
Yes,
school?
ma'am.
oh,
This
for
was the
next school
first
year?
year for us to get that going.
Very
And so
exciting.
we're actually expanding so that way we can reach every single kid will be tested for GT services.
I'm so excited to hear about those results. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Byer, 3A.
Yes, it had to do with the easement at Driscoll Middle School. I had a couple of questions related to that. For the easement, is there language, maybe I missed it, I know we have language that talks about the actual dedication of the easement, but if they're going into construction, do we have anything that shows how they're able to access that area? Because they're going to have to go either through Redland Oaks, right, or Driscoll to get to it, to build whatever sanitary sewer line or is the sanitary sewer line already there? I guess, two questions. Is a line already in place, and I just didn't catch that?
No, sir,
Okay.
it's not.
And so if they do go to construction, or when they go to construction, do we have an agreement with SAW or whoever about construction access and repairs if they rip things up or if they damage anything?
Mr.
coming?
Byer, to answer your first question, we anticipate, if you look at Exhibit 1, that the contractor is going to access our property from their property, which is the large green tract that's at the lower, I'll call it the lower quadrant.
I got it.
Just south of the football field. They're going to come on our property there, and they're going to construct along a line that essentially bisects Redland Oaks and Driscoll Middle School. They have a 10-foot easement to do construction for the 25-foot permanent easement where they're going to install an underground sanitary sewer line.
Got it.
Any areas they disturb, they have to put back.
Sure.
Any roads that they cut, they have to replace.
Okay, I didn't realize.
That's part of the service.
Got it. I didn't realize that was the property that they were, that makes sense. Now with that, because I am a landscape architect, so I have to ask this question.
Okay.
There are some trees along that line, and especially for the Redland Oaks track, it looks like that provides some shade. Are we going to, and there's some buffer between the homes and Driscoll, right there. There's a few trees, and I'd hate for SAW or that contractor to just come in and rip those out, and Redland Oaks lose that benefit on an August day when they can go on the north side of their track and get in some shade. Anyway, I don't know if we have any control over that now that if we grant them this easement, but I'd really like to make sure we don't disrupt what's already there.
And I see the trees you're referring to. You can see the alignment comes pretty much just south of the track.
Yeah.
And hugs the northern edge of that tree line. We're going to do our level best to make sure that the trees that are on our property remain undisturbed. As far as the trees that are on their property, we don't have anything to say about that.
Well, I understand that. I just want to make sure that we don't disturb.
Yes, sir. We're going to do our very best to maintain all the trees that are there.
Okay. That is all I had. Thank you.
For the board's information, Merited Homes is planning this to be a completely residential property with about 158 single-family units. So that'll be more students for Redland Oaks and Driscoll Middle School in the future.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve C1A?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve C2C?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Laos. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve C3A?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Item thank everybody for coming in and answering those questions.
Yes, thank
Item 12, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, third quarter investment reports. Those have all been provided for you. Item 13, discussion and possible action regarding board members' request for items to be placed on a future agenda and our request for reports from the administration. Do I have a board member wishing to request an item?
I do.
Ms. Huey?
Dr. Micah, I know we're coming into budget season, right, Mr. Reader, isn't that true? But the issue brought up by Mr. Schroeder tonight, I did not know if that was going to be part of our budget discussions, and if we need to be looking at a review of those salaries. Hoping to see some money going into salaries this year, but if it's not going to be part of the budget discussion, could we maybe get a report on where we stand on the numbers that he was sharing with us tonight? And nothing extensive, just kind of a comparison model.
So let me ask this, will that be included in budget, or do we need to have a motion to put that on a agenda?
So,
Or you're just wanting a report? I guess
Yeah, that's kind of where I am too. I mean, is it?
May I interject real quick?
Yes.
Did we get a couple, in the last 2 or 3 months, I believe we got a listing of all the hourly wage rates. Was that part of, I guess, do we already have that information is what I'm curious about?
so he is an hourly employee, so the hourly should have incorporated that. Now,
And I don't recall which board meeting it was, but
right,
we did get an
so
extensive list of all those hourly.
what I can do
positions.
is verify that was in there. And then if it's not, I can let you know what that is.
Sorry, Ms. Huey, sorry, I didn't mean to take over
No,
your
that's-
item,
no,
but
it
reminded me that
No,
I
that
think
was a
we-
great point, though.
we
That's,
have
yeah,
that
that's
somewhere,
important to
hopefully.
recognize too. So I don't really know.
So
if
that's more of like a report then?
Yeah, and in which case that would require a motion and a second for a report. But at this point, then if we don't know, I think we could hold on it. I just felt like that issue needed to be addressed if it's something that's not going to be covered during budget session.
So I'll just tell you what I wrote down is visit with Shyla and look at market analysis.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to do. Is I'll get with Shyla and look at what are they paid in relative comparison to the market value in our area.
Perfect. I mean, you know me, I'm not really big into asking for
Yep.
massive reports or anything like that. That's wasted money as far as I'm
Sure.
concerned. But
Sure.
but
Well-
a response to that issue
Yeah.
would
And-
be kind of, I think, important to hear.
And if you guys remember, 2 years ago, you all voted and approved a bus driver pay raise
Right.
because we were out of. So we'll take a look at it and see what we can see.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, item, I can't count right now, 14, adjournment, and the time is 9:14. Thank you all for being here.